We were playing some video games and watching Twitch, and I brought up the idea, hey, I used to work in this microanalytics startup called SimpleBet, and they did it for NFL, NBA, and I was like to my friend, hey, we should do this for esports. It just makes a lot more sense.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear episode 158 with Shivam from Rimble, which is building next generation esports odds and analytics. Recorded in person at the World Trade Center, Shivam talks about how his experience as an early engineer at SimpleBet helped him see the opportunity for Rimble, the challenges building micromarkets for esports that led to an early pivot, how he's been able to successfully navigate the integration roadmap with operator partners, why he's prioritized bootstrapping and driving growth through revenue, and a whole lot more. Shivam is quietly building an impressive business with Rimble, and I know you'll agree after hearing this episode.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the number one CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. If you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.
All right, we're back here on the Betting Startups pod, and I'm joined in person with Shivam. Shivam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me over. It's great to be in person. I think it's so much better than doing it over Zoom.
I agree. And you, my friend, came straight here after getting off a red-eye flight from the West Coast to the East Coast here in New York, where we're sitting. You're looking awfully fresh for a guy that just took a red-eye flight. How you feeling?
I'm feeling well, actually. I sleep really well on the plane, so I crash for those 5 hours, but I'm going to crash right after this, so don't worry.
Yeah, I took a red-eye flight from the West Coast the day before, and I just took a look at myself in the mirror before we started recording. I'm like, man, I hope there's some good AI filtering technology that can remove these bags from under my eyes, because I didn't sleep nearly as well as you did on the flight. So I'll do my best to get us through this episode, Shivam. So look, we met back in October at G2E for the first time. Our mutual friend, Mayor Moses, introduced us. Shout out to Mayor. Everybody seems to know Mayor, and Mayor knows everybody. And you are working on some pretty cool stuff. And in my opinion, you've been kind of flying under the radar a little bit with Rimble. So I'm really excited to drill down on what you're building. But let's just start with an introduction, Shivam. For the audience, can you give us a bit of a sense of who you are? Talk a bit about your background and some of the major chapters of your journey before you started Rimble.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Mumbai. It's like the New York of India. So the financial capital is on the West Coast. And I grew up there, spent 18 years of my life there. I think the biggest thing I did in those 18 years was in my senior year of high school, I loved building video games, or I loved video games. I built a couple of video games, and they got to the top 10 on the App Store, and I made a decent amount of money off them.
What were they?
Do you know Clash Royale? Yeah. It was a game like Clash Royale, so multiplayer, like player versus player game. And I put it on the Amazon App Store actually for $1. Reason why is because the Amazon App Store is not saturated. Google Play Store had hundreds of apps. Yeah. So put it on that, made a little bit of money, and back then I knew, hey, I want to build a Silicon Valley startup. This is super cool, launching these products out. So I decided to go to Berkeley for a degree in computer science and business. And somewhere along that, I got into the sports betting space.
Somewhere along there. Well, we'll fill in those gaps in a minute here. Going to Berkeley, as you say, kind of getting immersed in the West Coast, Silicon Valley type culture. What was that like for you when you got there, right? You sort of, I guess, had this idea this is the place you wanted to be, but once you got there, did that expectation meet reality for you, or what was that like?
I think it exceeded my expectations. I think everyone there is trying to build something or the other. You meet really cool people from all walks of life. But I think the biggest thing is I think the university tries to give you resources to make sure that you kind of excel in whatever entrepreneurship journey you have. And I think that's what really allowed us to kickstart Rimble back in the day.
Let's talk about the origins of Rimble then. Fill in some gaps here in the timeline. You went to Berkeley, you graduated. Obviously, you're doing Rimble now. What happened in between, and what were the origins of Rimble? What was your aha moment, and then I guess the leap into entrepreneurship from there?
Yeah, so back in Berkeley, I tried a couple of different startups. None of it really worked out, unfortunately. But during my sophomore year summer and during my sophomore year, I worked at SimpleBet. They're a microanalytics startup based in New York, actually. And I worked in their horse racing product for 8 months. They never launched it, unfortunately, but I helped build micro markets on horse racing. So, how fast a horse is going to go in the next lap, what the positions are going to be. And that was a really cool experience. I'm someone who plays a lot of squash. I played nationally back in the day. And so combining that aspect of machine learning and sports worked really well for me. And during the pandemic, my best friend and I, he went to Harvard. We were playing some video games and watching Twitch. And I brought up the idea, hey, I used to work in this micro analytics startup called SimpleBet. And they did it for NFL, NBA. And those are typically games you consume on your television. And they still were doing micro betting on it, as a second screen experience. I was still like to my friend, hey, we should do this for esports. It just makes a lot more sense. We're consuming it on our laptops. We're consuming it on our phones. It natively allows this two-way interaction. And back then, I was at least naive. I thought that, hey, the data is also being created on the server. We're going to get the data in real time. It's going to be so much easier than what people were doing back in the day of sports. So we decided in 2020, 2021, after we graduated, that this is something that we want to seriously pursue, and that's how we started.
So your origins of Rimble were predicated on micro markets for esports. You sort of referenced there the data coming directly from the server, which of course it does, but there is a whole data ecosystem within esports, much like there is for traditional sports and data rights and all that. So talk a bit about that, like the data accessibility, and was it as easy to get the data to build the markets and to model everything? Was it as easy to get as you maybe theorized at the beginning, or did there end up being some challenges getting the data, or like what was that like, I guess, just getting the inputs you needed for that product?
Yeah, so it turns out that's the reason why we didn't end up doing micro markets at the beginning. I think data for esports is a mess. It's really fragmented and it's just all over the place. For example, when you watch a college football or even a NFL game, the start time is the start time. In esports, it could start 3 hours earlier. It could start 6 hours earlier. A male team could just randomly end up getting female players. Players can drop out. Players can switch teams like midway through the game. They cancel a map due to cheating. So all of these things happen, which makes it really difficult to actually have clean and consistent data. And we realize we cannot do anything with live. Let's start pre-game and let's try to focus on a niche that can actually fulfill a gap in the market. And maybe once we are better prepared, we can come back to micro markets. Because if the pre-game data was so bad, quality at least back in the day, what would be live like?
So once you decided that the go-to-market product wouldn't be micro markets for esports, what was it you guys decided to focus on in that pre-game context? What did you end up building?
So in 2021, 2022, my friends and I would play a lot of these fantasy apps, Pick'em. So, you click over, under on a player in soccer or football. But we didn't really see that for esports. And we thought that this can be a really good first offering of ours where we fill in esports player props and just focus on that. We looked around and no one was really doing that. People were just doing maybe money lines for esports. Player props really didn't exist as a concept. So we thought that we are risk-taking. We can build player props. And we also thought that the companies doing these fantasy offerings were also startups, so they would also be willing to take a risk and maybe offer esports. And for us, getting that revenue and the initial customers was really important. So we decided to go that route.
Talk a bit about esports more generally for maybe the audience that may not be as familiar with esports as they are like NFL. And look, I'm not an esports guy per se, but I did spend a number of years working for Pinnacle, which globally was one of the biggest operators and bookmakers for esports. We were modeling our own esports markets. So I got a bit of insight into the esports world through that. And there is a lot of from a fan perspective, there is a lot of enthusiasm for the individual players in esports. Yes, there's teams as well, but my impressions, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Shivam, but with esports, they tend to follow the players around across the different teams that these players might join. So I can see why player props as a product would be conducive to that. But talk about, just esports generally and what the consumers of esports are interested in and why you thought player props was the right product to go to market with.
I think you hit on a really good point, and this was our thesis as well. Fans for esports care about the players. They follow the players because they end up playing in that role. And in League of Legends, it's like you play different roles. You can play support. You can play someone who's attacking. And you love the player who's playing in the same role and same hero that you typically do. And you typically follow that player rather than have an allegiance to the team. While in college football, you want to follow your alma mater. You don't follow a particular player. It's, Berkeley for me. So we thought that player props would just be natural. And another thing is that a lot of people play video games. But how do they track themselves? You get a really nice screen at the end saying what your KDA ratio was, which is kills to death. And you tell your friend, oh, you died so many times. So stats are a big part of esports, and it's specifically predicated upon an individual stats. So people already think about, oh, I got X kills, I got Y deaths. So they already have the reasoning in place.
So with your player props product then for esports, talk about the traction you've gotten, right? You're obviously selling this as a solution to operators, both real money sportsbooks, but also some of the DFS operators you spoke about. What's the response been? And I guess, are they seeing good traction from esports? And I guess, obviously, like, NFL's king, we know that, but like, where does esports fit in for them? And are they excited by it? Is there a good response to it? Just what are you seeing out there from the market?
Yeah, so the way I kind of view it is that when we pushed it out to the market, our customers were hesitant because they weren't sure if their audience would be receptive to it or not. So they started off with Counter-Strike because globally that had the highest volumes. And they actually saw a really good response from their user base on just Counter-Strike. And to date, I think Counter-Strike may be the 4th or 5th largest category on its own on any of these operators. So, there's NFL, NBA, maybe MLB, and maybe then college basketball and football, and then it's actually Counter-Strike on its own. So there's a large user base, and I think the reason why they're so hungry is because they're underserved by other categories. So sportsbooks and traditional operators don't actually have a lot of esports content, let alone player props. So this, really fills that gap in that market by offering people something that they really care about. So the one thing that we saw is that there was high volume, but more importantly, fans kept asking to add more esports. It's not only limited to Counter-Strike. So now we support League of Legends, Call of Duty, NBA 2K, which is the esports version of the NBA. So fans want all of this, but more importantly, now they want even more choice. So before they were happy with kills, but now they're like, please, can you add assists? Can you add deaths? Or we want alternative lines. We want same game parlays on it. So those are, all offerings that our customers were asking us rather than us pushing it down their throat, which was very interesting for us. And, we've had to catch up and get esports to the parity of, the sports offering.
And then I guess your commercial model, is it a typical GGR rev share, or how do you sort of monetize all of this IP you're developing?
That's exactly the way we view it, is that if our customers succeed with our product, we should also succeed with them. And as they grow, because we believe the space will also grow and our customers will, we too will grow with them. So it's a GGR percentage.
From a product roadmap perspective, how do you guys prioritize what you're building, right? It sounds like you're getting a lot of demand, so you're sort of responding to what the market's asking you for, which is a great position to be in. But obviously resources are finite. How do you guys sort of prioritize your roadmap and decide what you're going to focus on next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're very customer driven. If customer demand's there, we'll actually focus on that rather than anything on our internal roadmap, just because they are more in tune with the end audience and they know what will work best. Obviously, we have the original vision of micro markets that we're actually working on, but our customers want X product and we deliver it to them. So that's what dictates our roadmap, at least in the short term.
So you just said you're working on micro markets again. It's almost like a full circle moment, right? You started Rimble with that as your original thesis. Obviously, you had some constraints with the data as an input. You went to market with another product. It sounds like you're now coming back to the micro market. So like, what's changed in that time? Like, is data better now? Like, why are you able to maybe focus on this now, whereas you weren't 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think 2 big things happened. One, we ended up getting a couple of official data deals in place, which was really important for us. Our partners really support us in that, so shout out to them. But more importantly, I think we figured out how to combine multiple different sources to have one cohesive ecosystem for esports data. So not only do we get official data, but we have computer vision supplementing that, because official data doesn't cover everything. So we had to build out the entire computer vision module. We also had to build out a scheduling module, which not only gets data from Twitter, but from these various different sites and combines into one source. So the first piece was something we worked on for player props. And then the next 2 pieces were something that we gradually had to do because our customers wanted live scoring. So it kind of fell into place with all of these 3 pieces working together.
I mean, you're building some pretty hardcore technology to support all of this. Talk about your team. How big is the team? And I guess, what is the concentration of, sounds like probably a pretty engineering heavy team, but yeah, give us a sense of the team behind the scenes here.
Yeah, everyone's an engineer. So we have 7 engineers. Everyone's based out of San Francisco. Most of the people on the team are friends I knew at UC Berkeley. And my co-founder, obviously, he's my childhood friend who went to Harvard and Cambridge. So, we are Silicon Valley startup, engineering focused, and, we really believe in like product-led innovation.
Love it. So normally when people hear the terms Silicon Valley startup, they immediately associate funding as part of the whole journey, yet you have bootstrapped this thing the whole way and are funding the whole operation with revenue, which is an amazing place to be in. Talk about that decision to bootstrap this as opposed to doing what most of your peers within the Bay Area do, which is go out and raise a seed round and build and then raise a bigger round. Why have you chosen to bootstrap it? And as part B to that, Shivam, do you have any thoughts around growth capital? Do you think at some point growth capital might make sense for you guys? Or are you really committed to building this business organically with revenue?
I think what you said is 100% true. All of my friends back in San Francisco, they love raising money. That's the thing that they spend 90% of time talking about. Or we raised a Series A from Sequoia or XYZ person. But for us, I think we were lucky that we started this in university when our costs were low. Luckily, my parents were paying for me, and university is a time where you don't have to spend a lot. So we were able to hit revenue when we were just out of university, and that helped, pay for our salaries or, keep us afloat. And we realized that, hey, we can just continue building this product out and just be focused on the product rather than spend, 3 months trying to raise money and then deal with investor expectations, pressures, while we can right now just be committed to the product and scale that as it goes. In our space, at least, sales cycles are a really long, time period. Getting revenue incrementally is hard. And for us, we didn't want to deal with building unnecessary product that just gets initial short-term revenue and the customers end up churning and not having a good long-term pipeline. So we're committed to actually just being bootstrapped. I think it's worked out really well for us. And it's just a different way of doing business. I think we focus on keeping our costs low. If you hear our AWS bill per month, you'd be like, that's cheaper than what you guys probably spend per month. So we're really focused on keeping a really lean business.
That's awesome. It sounds like that's a big part of your DNA, both for you individually, but part of your organization's DNA is this lean mentality, which has served you very well. But at some point, do you see outgrowing that, or is that something you're just committed to for the foreseeable future?
I think for right now, we have a really good path to growing our revenue and increasing our profits. So growth capital is not something we're really looking at. But if there ever is a time where Rimble wants to expand into more verticals than we can manage, and we really see an opportunity where speed is of the urgency, that's something we're never going to say no to that.
And you guys are very much known for your esports product, but you and I spoke the other week, and you did allude to the fact that there's some other products that you're working on, including other sports. Can you talk about some of the other things beyond the core esports offering that are currently in the pipeline right now?
Yeah, so we were selling our esports product to a couple of Asian customers, and one of their big requests was that, hey, can you support cricket? It's really big in Asia, and not a lot of people support it, especially on the player prop side of things, same game parlays. And coming from India, cricket's something close to my co-founder and I. And we were like, why not, right? This is something that right up our alley. We thought about supporting e-cricket, but we were like, let's just do it for actual cricket. And it turns out that the data quality is so much better than esports, and it was a lot easier to work with. And I think we've delivered them a great product for cricket. And I think we've then since expanded into kabaddi, which is an even more niche Asian sport, maybe just consumed in actually India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. But there is a big demand for it, and I think we might be one of the only providers in the market that actually covers kabaddi in the depth that we do. So we really see moving forward an opportunity in some of the more alternative content, the niche content, that actually works really well with esports, because we really view this as a driver for our operator partners as a way to expand into new adjacent audience that they never had exposure to. But at the same time, we are also looking at other offerings in esports itself, like, streamer betting options or esports virtuals for that matter.
So you're looking down the longer tail of more niche sports. Going the other way though, do you ever think about attacking, some of the more popular sports, or do you think that space is well covered and well served by existing providers and that your opportunity is more along that long tail?
Yeah, I think the existing space is pretty well covered. I think platform providers have a really good understanding of NFL, NBA. They have all the markets that they would want. A new provider can't add too much value. We view it as where can we add the most value. And I think existing providers would find it really hard to move into esports just because of all the raw data issues and the fundamental way esports is modeled is different. I think they're going to have a really challenging time moving into that. So we want to stay where we feel comfortable and we've built a moat in.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I want to come back to your time at SimpleBet. The audience will be very familiar with SimpleBet, obviously. And to me, Shivam, you represent this class of founders that are coming into the space that are people that have spent time working within the industry, either at operators themselves or at key suppliers such as SimpleBet, and have taken that time working at these companies to really develop an understanding of the landscape, develop a deep domain expertise and subject matter expertise on the actual problem space, and understanding the opportunity as well. And I just want to get your reflections, I guess, on your time at SimpleBet, kind of what you took away from that time that sort of set you up for this chapter with Rimble and just sort of bridging those two experiences.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I took away from SimpleBet is that, sports betting is a big thing in North America. It's going to keep growing. I think that's something that didn't really hit me back in university because it was something new. People were excited by it, but we really didn't see the opportunity for it until you came into the industry and you saw how excited people were in the expansion. But the other big thing that has really helped Rimble out is automation. I think traditional providers typically have a lot of humans in the loop, but SimpleBet was more of a tech company and they tried to automate everything out, remove the human from the loop. And that's what we've kind of like incorporated at Rimble. It's in our DNA to just remove the human from the loop, keep the machines at it so that they can, support 24/7 coverage and scale infinitely. So I think that's something that I really learned from SimpleBet and I'm really grateful for that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's certainly set you up for a great chapter and journey that you're on now with Rimble. One other question coming from the Bay Area, and again, back to the Silicon Valley startup culture. It's always been somewhat of a mystery to me why the sports betting industry hasn't had more traction in the Bay Area, sort of traditional Silicon Valley circles. There's not a lot of startups that come from that ecosystem that enter our industry. Not a lot of VCs funding sports betting startups. There's, I think, 2 or 3 now that have gone through Y Combinator, but not many. For you as somebody that sits at the intersection of both the sports betting industry and is a resident of the Bay Area and immersed in the local culture there, why do you think that is? Is there anything about the sports betting industry that makes it not a particularly compelling opportunity from a Silicon Valley perspective or a VC perspective? What are your sort of reflections on that?
I think when I talk to my friends about sports betting, they're super excited by it. It's not as if they're not interested in it. It's not as if they don't want to do it in the space. But I think what's challenging is that it's something where you don't understand the operations unless you've been in that space. You don't see the other side of things. While, let's say you're doing Uber or something, you're a consumer of the product, but more importantly, you know how it's working on the back end. While sports betting is more mysterious to them. Mm-hmm. So that's, one barrier for them. The other thing is that people are scared about regulation. I think a lot of my friends, they want to grow super quick. They want to break the mold and they feel like when there's government regulation in the space, it's kind of challenging to scale. Whether that's correct or not, I think that's a point up for debate.
Interesting insights. Let's pretend we have a crystal ball here in front of us. 5 years into the future, where is Rimble in 5 years' time and what does life look like for you?
I think would have micro markets on the market in 5 years, fulfill that original vision. But I think more importantly, we want to be that kind of data and AI company that kind of supports a wide variety of experiences, not only in the betting space, but also in the fan engagement space. We want to do everything and all for esports and alternative sports. So be that one company that kind of powers the entire ecosystem, whether it's like streamer engagement, or micro markets or SGP, or maybe even official dashboards or things that help tournament organizers.
Awesome. And we're recording this in New York. We're in the World Trade Center right now. We're here obviously for the NEXT New York City Summit. But beyond the agenda of the summit itself, what are you up to in New York for the rest of your time here?
I think a lot of my friends from the Bay Area ended up moving here. A lot of them grew up in the Bay Area. And after Berkeley, they all migrated to New York. So just have to catch up with everyone, like 900 people. So I'm going to be drained by the end of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's do some quick rapid fire questions before we get out of here, Shivam. So quick answers from you. First one, when you get up in the morning, what's the first app you check on your phone?
I actually check the news app just to see what's happening. But most of the time, my mom actually WhatsApps me. So I am actually responding to her because it's like morning in India.
Yeah, you always want to respond to mom first.
Exactly.
If you're in the karaoke lounge, what song are you singing?
I actually do not sing. If I sing, everyone's going to run out of the karaoke lounge, so you do not want to hear me sing.
Nothing in the shower?
No, never. I actually don't listen to a lot of music. I listen to lo-fi music, but like songs with lyrics, never really my thing.
Got to stay in the flow state, right?
Exactly.
All right. And if you could be somebody else for one day, who would that be and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I have an uncle who's really, really good at business. He's built like a sugar factory from scratch and, is one of the largest in Asia. I would love to be him and, see how he goes about a manufacturing business. I think that's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, much different than building software, right?
Exactly.
Awesome, Shivam. Well, look, this has been a lot of fun. It's been great to get a bit of a deeper insight into what you and your team are building. And obviously things are going really well. Really excited for you and look forward to continuing to follow your story, man. Thanks for swinging by.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Really appreciate you setting this up. It's a super cool experience doing it in person. And I'm glad we could make this happen. Thank you.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.